My name is Rene Van Hoorn.
And I'm Elizabeth Owen, Liz.
Call her Liz. And someone went, let's clap now and get that over. And that'll be all we have for this evening. Someone once said, well-behaved women don't make history. And I've got to say that Libby Whaley was not a well-behaved woman, if you look around right now.
We really can't thank you all enough for coming and pausing to take notice of our incredible Libby. In the true essence of Libby and Jack, we planned our time together today to be full of tears, laughter, southern warmth, and surprises.
As you can see by the program, there's a wonderful group of people who will be talking about the many facets of Libby's life. Jack felt that bringing together and honoring each community that Libby belonged to would be a good way to reflect on her life and all that came with it. Is Bogue stealing our thunder?
We realize that each one of us has many Libby stories to share, and we hope that you will all stay around after the service to share those stories with others here and join us in a few toasts to Libby. Libby, 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 where do I start? I saw a bumper sticker this morning that said, wag more, bark less. And of course I thought of Libby because it involved dogs and it was a little bit of a bossy statement. I first met her in 1985. She was open and welcoming, a little wild and kooky, and she had big curly hair, so I liked her immediately. As I got to know her, I began to see that she had many layers to be peeled back and discovered as time went on. There were a bunch of us in Santa Barbara in those early days who were living far away from our families. Within a fairly short time, we formed a surrogate family with the generous and imaginative Whaleys at the center. Some years we were closer than others, but almost 3 decades later, we still spend big holidays and special occasions together. And like real siblings, we argue over things like whose turn it is to host Thanksgiving dinner. I've always been impressed at the ease with which Libby created and maintained strong connections like this with people she cared about, even over great distances and long periods of time. Her patients became her friends. Her friends became her family. Even her dog's family became her family. When her chocolate lab Tootie had puppies, she made sure that each one went to the best home, kept in touch with them throughout their lives, and insisted we all get together for annual puppy reunions at the beach. We took some great trips together, and traveling with Libby was always a kick, whether it was a week in Mexico or a 3-day fundraising walk to Malibu. My favorite was our 1995 Roots trip. We headed east with Jack and my husband Dave to visit all 4 of our hometowns, with a rented Cadillac and a couple of side trips to the Outer Banks and New York City thrown in just to make things more interesting. We met each other's parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and childhood friends. We sat around dinner tables on back porches in rural Tennessee, North Carolina, and New Jersey, swapping stories, telling jokes, arguing over politics and current events. What started out as a casual 2-week trip led me to a deeper understanding of who Libby was and where she came from, and it became part of our shared history. In 1994, along with many other friends, we literally danced our way through Libby's first cancer treatments. Not to say that treatment was a walk in the park for her, but cranking up the music, moving the furniture against the walls, and cutting loose was indicative of the way Libby and Jack faced that challenge. I remember the day she started to lose her hair. She got Jack to shave the rest of it off, and off we went to a U2 concert in Pasadena. She readily embraced her new look and was a big hit in our section of the Rose Bowl. A bunch of really cute young guys in front of us were quite taken with her beautiful bald head, and she loved it. When I was expecting my first child, Libby was really there for me. My husband had an illness that landed him in the hospital several times that year, and we knew he wouldn't have much strength when my due date came around. Libby eagerly volunteered to be my backup coach. She attended all the birthing classes with us, and she dutifully rushed to the hospital when she got that 2 a.m. call. I'll never forget the love and support she gave me throughout that very long day. I can still hear the music she played for me as I labored. I can still see her holding newborn Harper in her arms. And I'll always be grateful for the role she played in bringing our beautiful child into the world. She bossed me around a lot that day, too. I'm surprised I didn't have twins with all of her pushing. Tiny little Libby left a big indelible mark on me. She was a steady force throughout my adult life. She pushed me to do things I never would have done on my own. And you all know, again, how she could do that. And she inspired me to be busier and more involved and to give more to my community than I ever thought I would have time for. She was a big sister, a mentor, and a great, great friend. I feel so fortunate to have loved her, laughed with her, and learned from her all these years, and I try to pass some Libbiness onto my children each day. Love deeply, help others, work hard, be patient, be tolerant, be yourself. Plan for tomorrow, but live for today. Hike in the moonlight, dance as often as possible, travel to new lands, climb to new heights, and don't be afraid to fall. Thank you, Libby.
Hi, my name's Steve, and I'm honored that Jack asked me to tell a little bit about Libby's climbing days. I did a lot of climbing with Libby, and I'll do my best not to fall apart. As a number of you in the audience I know did climb with her. I don't have a prepared speech, so I'm going to totally wing this. I'll be somewhat humorous, I hope, but Libby definitely was a shining light. If it was a dull day, an overcast day, a stormy day, a hard climb, something scaring the piss out of us, she was always upbeat and willing to give it a try. And you know, when you climb with someone, it's really more important of who you climb with, not how good they are, you know, not how their name or anything else. It's just who they are. And Libby was definitely first choice with any of us to go climbing with. If you want to, you know, have a good time, excellent climb and a good experience. The very first climbing, I was telling Jack this, I hope I'm not too crass in a couple of these things. Libby was pretty outrageous at the time, as you know. If anybody here knows Libby. All right. Very first climbing trip that Dick, Sam, and I went on a trip with Libby to Yosemite. We didn't really know her very well, but we climbed with her a couple times here, and so let's go to Yosemite and climb some cliffs there. And we get to Paso Robles about halfway there, and we were hungry for lunch, so where's they going to want to eat? And so Libby says, well, I've never eaten at a Burger King. And so, okay, we'll eat at Burger King. So we're standing at the counter, and this big hunking guy walks up and leans over the counter at little old Libby. Dick and I are standing behind her, waiting our turn, and she looks up at him and she says, I never had a Whopper. Show me your Whopper. And Dick and I are like, who are we on a trip with? And we found out, and we climbed with her as much as we could after that. She's a riot. So I'm just going to tell you some stories as they come to my mind. One time, you know, we'd been climbing a whole bunch together, and a bunch of us climbed some big walls, which means a cliff big enough to spend a night overnight on. And when you do that, you're probably packing as light as you can. You're taking maybe a little bit of cheese and some waters, you know, little as you can, because you don't want to be pulling that weight up with you. So Libby says, can we do a bivouac, an overnight? Okay, sure. So we go to Yosemite up to Tuolumne Meadows, and we pick a wall that's doable and, you know, within our ability. And and every cliff's got different routes up it, and they all have names and stuff. And so we pack up to go up to spend the night and do her first bivouac. And this particular climb has got a real roomy ledge. There's lots of room to spread out, and we had a rock between us for a table if we wanted to, you know, for our dinner. And anyway, we get all settled down, and the night's starting to chill off, and the stars are coming out. And when you go climbing with somebody, especially if you're sitting on a ledge for any length of time, or you get up to the top of a mountain and you got time to look around, and you know, I could get romantic about the relationships between climbers and how tight you get, and the deep friendships you have, and the trust. You're literally tied together. You're literally catching someone if they fall so they don't die. When you're sitting on a bivouac with someone, and especially a good friend, you do a lot of talking late into the night, and you talk about wives and girlfriends and boyfriends and life in general. And that was one of the first times that Libby really opened up to me about Jack. And I'll tell you, from that night, she loved you so deeply. And that's when you really talk deep sometimes. And you were her rock. I've told you that. Anyway, this night we pack light, right? Libby's first bivouac. Well, we're about to break out our dinner, and off to the side, literally from here to you guys right here in the first row, there's another route up the cliff. And there's these two young bucks on it, and it's getting dark, and we can't see any flashlights, and the two of them are cussing at each other. A storm. And they're yelling at each other, "Why didn't you bring the headlamp?" "Well, I don't know, I thought you were bringing the headlamp." In the meantime, Libby and I are taking out our bivouac food, bottle of wine, the baguette, the cheese, the salami, and everything else, and we're sitting there with the cups. And these two guys are literally 50 feet from us, just having a horrible time, and we're just raising our glasses going, this is the way you do it. And when we got up the next morning, sure enough, they're only about 100 feet up still. They've been creeping up this crack, and they're still yelling at each other. So anyway, that was just a cool experience with her on that. Are there any police in the audience? Well, I don't give a damn. This is not really climbing, but a few of us went up to Cold Springs Bridge one night. It's illegal to be on the bridge. We climbed up underneath it at night, pitch black. And Libby and Kevin, and who else was with us? Mark? And Dick saw him. You climb up the big arch underneath the bridge. We're not on the bridge, we're underneath, and the big girder's underneath the bridge, climbing up. And Jack, I think you were at Cold Springs Tavern, weren't you? With a buddy? Well, it's against state law to be on that bridge. And we were up underneath it under the girders, tying up ropes. We're going to jump off it. Not bungee jumping. We're going to climb it with our climbing harnesses on. We're going to just jump. It's 400 feet straight down, and we're going to do a full rope length straight on down. Bingo. Middle of the night, nothing but stars. And Libby's trying to work up her gut to do this, and I think Mark jumped and Dick jumped, and then Libby's trying to work up her nerve, and out of the dark, we're trying to be quiet, we're trying to be dark so that nobody sees us. "Libby! You up there? Are you going to jump?" It's Jack down there. We're going, and Libby's like, Jack, shut up. You get busted. She lost her nerve. But I have to say that of all the climbers I've climbed with, she's probably had more balls than any guys I ever climbed with. I'll tell you just a couple more, and then I'll take my turn, take my leave. I guess it's hard to explain what climbing is like or climbing with somebody if you don't climb. But I want to try to just paint a picture of a climb she and I did that really sticks in my mind personally. And it was just Libby and I. We went up to climb the backside of Half Dome in Yosemite, and it's not a really super hard climb, but there's sections where you're climbing for a long ways, and there's nothing to put in the rock to keep you from falling all the way down and getting seriously killed. Anyway, the picture I want to paint is, if you can imagine being in the high Sierras, it's early morning, and the air is crisp, and the sun's just starting to hit the tops of the peaks, and the air smells like pine, and you're standing in some soft pine needles, and in front of you this crystalline white granite cliff shoots up, straight up, and rounds off and just disappears into a beautiful blue sky in the morning. And there's this red and yellow rope coming from me going up and just almost disappearing. And up at the top of that is this brightly colored, hair flying in the breeze, wildflower. That's Libby. And she's hooting, and she's hollering, and she's cussing. And she's trying as hard as she can to find some place to put something in so she doesn't fall all the way back down to me. Just an awesome woman. On the picture on the cover here of this that you guys got, in the climbing world, if I may be so bold as to say that to do something for the very first time that no one's ever done before is called the first ascent, and it's kind of the crown jewel of climbing. Doesn't matter how hard it is or how easy it is, to go someplace where no one's, and do something no one's ever done before. And the picture of her on this is her doing just that up in the backside of these mountains here. And she named the climb and dedicated it to her father. And she named it The Wind Beneath My Wings, which was a song that was very dear to her and made her think of her father. And I'm going to finish by just reading one part of that song because it relates to Libby too. Did you ever know that you're my hero? I know she is to a lot of you guys out there. And everything I would like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, for you are the wind beneath my wings.
We can see how many people lives that Libby touched. It kind of brings me around to thinking of her like a kite, you know, with all these little tattered things hanging on them, on the tail. It's her friends, her family, her coworkers, and those bits are really important. That's what gives you stability in a proper flight. And one of those little tail bits is a group of her women friends from a somewhat exclusive club. And I know that doesn't sound like Libby throwing in with elitists of any kind, but this is an association that she didn't decide, nor none of us decided to join, and that's breast cancer patients. And we have a support group of our breast cancer thrivers, and we meet twice a month to share and to receive and to give to each other. And I know, talk to people say, well, I don't need a support group, I have my family, and it's not always what you get from the support group as much as what you often give, and I think she well understood that. And although things that we say in that group meeting and share there are confidential, each of us have very different memories, and they kind of, all the women sent me their little ideas of emotions and thoughts and feelings, and I volunteered to put the words together, but I know that Libby wrote a poem, so I'm not going to do that, but rather kind of like a word association. And some of the nouns and really active verbs that came through these women's messages to me were warrior woman, teacher, trailblazer, decision maker, taking charge of her cancer, her treatment, and her life. And then, of course, there was always her gentle but strong voice reaching out and calling people. One gal said, she opened my world by showing me the freedom of water. And one of the first voices that I had heard after my diagnosis was Libby's voice, full of hope and joy. And another gal said, we shared laughter, but we kept it real about the cancer. Another gal said, when she saw my name on the list, she recalled my husband's rehab days and called to offer her support. I was so touched by her thoughtfulness. Courage, determination, commitment to help other survivors. Oh, and here's a doozy, but I think it's rather appropriate. Spark plug. If you don't know what that means, you shouldn't be driving. But anyway, that's really on target. I thought that was a rather appropriate one. One of our group has planted a tree, and then when the time is right, it will bear a fabulous fruit, and that will be Libby's avocados. And finally, her sense of humor. More than one person mentioned that. One person described it as wicked. I think that's supposed to be a compliment. And I would add irreverent, and that is a compliment. And she often had us laughing until we cried, and I think any of you know that laughter is the best medicine. She got us all to expand on the idea of a bucket list and would say some of the things she had done, like, you know, driving the convertible and those kinds of things. And then she also gave us permission to have another kind of chocolate list. You know what I'm trying to say, because that's what she called it. And that's for things that we don't really like, but have to put up with, like chemo, radiation, shots, pills, itchy wigs. You kind of get the idea. But most of all, the laughter. And I think anytime our group gets together and we talk about our chucket list, we'll always think of Libby. So again, I'm not a poet and I don't put words together, so we'll take someone else's words to say to Libby. Now you belong in heaven, and the stars spell out your name. And it seems to us you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading in the sunset or when the rain set in. Sweet sister, Libby, stay in our hearts.
My name is Rick Stich, and I'm the art teacher for the wellness program at the Cancer Center, Santa Barbara. And Libby was in our art class there for the last couple of years, and we all got to know her very well. And I think I speak for everyone at the Cancer Center who knew Libby, who was in the classes with her, or the staff, everyone. We all deeply loved Libby. The only thing I can say is she's about the most lovable character that ever walked through the doors. She was an amazing person. A real gift to all of us, to everybody that was there. She brightened up the room. I'd had this experience of getting the class started, and Libby was always just a little bit late, you know. She's a rascal. And like my wife often says, you know, she's one of those people with that twinkle in her eye, you know. She definitely. So I feel somebody like, does somebody turn up the lights? And I turn around, there's Libby in a purple wig, you know, and immediately, you know, the place is animated and everybody's in a better mood. And she brought joy and happiness to all of us, and we miss her deeply every day. She left us a gift I'd like to share with you. Kind of a little bit opposite of what I just said. I was going around the room one day, and Libby looked kind of glum. I said, "What's wrong, Libby?" She said, looking down at her picture, "I don't like it. It's ugly." And I said, "Well, Libby, okay, forget that one then. Let's do something else." I said, "Tell you what, Libby, we'll get a couple big pieces of paper and some big brushes, and we'll paint like we're little kids." And she said, "Yeah, that sounds good. Let's have some fun." So we went over to the other end of the table, and right away, you know, started splashing the paint around. And after about 15 minutes, I looked down, and I see this. I couldn't believe my eyes. It's just so full of aloha. It's so Libby, you know, so opposite of this picture that she was working on. And so I thought I'd bring it and share it with you. I think it's like Libby, a real treasure. Libby was a treasure, a real gem. And she just warmed everybody's heart. I couldn't help it. I went to my phone and I looked up on Wikipedia what the significance of a red lotus is. The red lotus, Tibetan, it's Padma. Sanskrit, it's Kamala. It signifies the original nature and purity of the heart. It's the lotus of love and compassion, passion, and all the other qualities of the heart. It's the flower of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion. We always knew Libby was on a fairly good team. That proves it right there. Rene asked me to also tell you a story about another thing that we did together. Libby really wanted to learn how to surf, so I gave her and a couple of her friends surfing lessons. And first day we went out, you know, Libby was so, like Steve was saying, she was so amped, you know, so ready to go. I'm trying to give her a run through, and she goes, yeah, I got it. Okay. I said, Libby, let's practice on the beach, you know, so I got her to pop up a couple times. So she gets in the water, the first wave, you know, she bobbles it, you know, And I said, Libby, no, you got to pop up right away, you know? And so I pushed her into the wave a little bit, and she stood up, popped up, put her arms out, and she's surfing. By the way, a nice little wave that she caught. So she goes in, and she heads in off on a little bit of an angle, and she caught the shore break. And when she caught the shore break goes really fast, you know? And by now she's getting a really long ride, and I'm going, yeah, Libby. There was only one slight problem with this adventure. We had never discussed an exit strategy for a wave. So in pure Libby fashion, the way she charged everything, she ran right up onto the beach, ran right off the front of her board, and at full run, hit the sand and crashed. She got up, shaked her like a little kid, shaked herself off like this, you know? And she went, yeah! Like that. It was amazing. But that's not the end of the story. So a little while after that, she wanted to go again. So I said, okay, Libby, let's go. So we all went down and friends, and we paddled out. And of course, Bogue always has to, you see how he has to get into she has to get into the picture all the time. So Bogue keeps paddling out. Libby, go on the beach, Bogue, go back. You know, and so we're trying to catch waves, and Bogue's swimming around, and Libby's saying, go back, Bogue, go back, the whole time. And so my wife paddled up on her stand-up board. You've probably seen those guys out there with the stand-up paddles. She paddles by, and Bogue seizes the opportunity. Figures out, hey, this is a board that a dog could get on. Jumps up on Janet's board, and Janet and Bogue paddle around while we're catching waves. Well, we get tired, everybody goes in. This beautiful little wave comes, Janet turns around, paddles into it, she and Bogue are now surfing. Right? And Janet, she's got a exit strategy for the wave, but Bogue does not. Bogue leaps off the front of the board, exactly like Libby did, and crashes into the sand. And then Bogue proceeds to go up on the sand and run around in circles, the equivalent of Libby's. Yeah. So apparently her infectious enthusiasm, it wasn't limited to the human kingdom. We all watched Libby go 15 rounds and stand there and say, "Is that all you got?" It was amazing, absolutely amazing. She's an incredibly inspiring hero. I'll never forget her. We'll never forget her. Ever. It's incredible. She's a lightweight champion of life.
Libby and I met in 1974 at freshman orientation at East Carolina University. We shared so many things over the years. And one woman that couldn't be here today was another woman that we met at that day and stayed friends with from that point forward. And she became Libby's sister-in-law. Her name was KT. Still is KT. She couldn't be here, so she asked me to read a few of her memories. But as we all know, I didn't have enough paper to print them all. So I'm going to just read one choice one. She remembers we were 17 when we met at freshman orientation. Me, Sandy, Libby, and KT were pirates. I called us the Four Musketeers. KT remembers babysitting for Libby's bird, Angel, in Green Dormitory on the 9th floor. The damn bird died. I was horrified because I got stoned and forgot to feed her and give her fresh water one day. But Libby was wonderful and said that I didn't kill Angel. She must have been sick or something. But I still think I took that bird over the edge, perhaps.
Jack asked me to sing this song, and I think the magic and the mystery of music is how when you hear a song, it can instantly transport you to a time or a place, maybe where you were when you first heard the song. Sometimes you just need to hear the first chord, and you can tell what it is. It's amazing when you're hearing the radio and you hear just like one chord, and you go, ah, and you're already singing along. Well, Jack said that this song always reminded him of a day that the four of us, Jack and Libby and myself and my husband Brian, were sitting in my backyard, and a plane flew overhead and blocked the sun, just like that. And the shadows fell over our faces. And when he hears the song, he thinks of that. There is a town in North Ontario with dream, comfort, memory spare. And in my mind, I still need a place to go. All my changes were there. Blue, blue windows behind the stars. Yellow moon on the rise. Big bird flying across the sky, throwing shadows on our eyes, leaves us helpless, helpless, helpless. Baby, can you hear me now? The chains are locked and tied across the door. Baby, sing with me somehow. Blue, blue windows behind the stars. Yellow moon on the rise. Big birds flying across the sky, throwing shadows on eyes, leaves us helpless, 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 helpless. Helpless, 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 helpless. Helpless, 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 helpless. Baby, hear me now. Baby, sing with me now. Helpless, 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 helpless. Helpless, 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 helpless. Thank you, Libby.
Don't be afraid. It's double-spaced, really big print. You can't even hear me. Oh, I hate this. All right, is that better? Look. Okay, so
I first became close friends with Libby and Jack when they moved on to Shoreline Drive, which is just around the corner from my house. She and I were talking, and we found we had a common interest in glass. She had projects to finish in stained glass, and I did too. We decided to take an adult education class, and this started a long tradition of classes of mutual interest. Over the next 19 years, we took classes in stained glass, fused glass, jewelry, hand-built, casting, wire wrapping, and beading. Saturday, single sessions, and at night, sometimes 2 classes a week. Once, we even tried yoga and jewelry on the same evening. Libby was all about maximizing her time. I couldn't keep up that pace. Libby was a multi-talented artist. When she wasn't driving, she could start with a traveling cocktail on the way to class and then focus on her project. Libby could become obsessed with perfection in her projects. She'd agonize over the colors, the soldering, the placement, and the details. And when you look at the things that she's made, you can see it. It's all there. She took time to do things well, never slapdash or shoddy. She and Jack are similar in this regard. He supported her in all of her endeavors and got her the best tools. And she would make things that he was proud of. She would redo something over and over until she got it how she wanted it. She was always willing to come over to my house to play. I often ask people if they want to come over when I'm working on a cardboard project or making glass or ceramics things, and I don't always get takers. But I knew if I called Libby, she'd say, if someone could do it in their North Carolina or whatever, it's like, that sounds like fun. I could do that. And I do the same for her. She wanted to make a ceramic tile table, so we spent a few afternoons at 2,000 degrees painting tiles to put into that table, and she said, I wish I knew how this fucking thing would turn out before it was even fired. Libby was a craftsperson, and it showed in the elements of perfection and choice that she used in her pieces, and she was an artist in her designs, imagination, and that fine sense of knowing when something was finished. She also had a freedom of expression when she was doing her watercolors and poetry that she didn't always allow herself in other mediums. She started painting initially as a means to remember places, and we talked about how the process of painting and drawing uses different parts of your brain and allows a more visceral recollection of an experience or place. And she took this and ran with it in typical Libby fashion. She painted in Mexico, in the local parks, in Alaska, when she was both happy and sad in her garden. After meeting Rick Stich and taking his classes at the Cancer Center, she got beyond wanting things to look like what she saw them and was willing to let her pieces be as they were. The last project we worked on were her paperweights. She had bought the postcards and the photographs and had photographs printed, and we talked about how she wanted them placed, and she told me about the trip to New York with her sister and nieces. She wanted to make a keepsake piece for each of them. But she said she just didn't know when she was going to get the time to do it. Libby's time and energy were beginning to wane, and she recognized this. She called me a few weeks later, and she said she wanted to paint, go to the beach, and walk the dog. I picked her up, and we drove to Shoreline Park, looked at the ocean from the fence, and took Bogue to my house, where we started to paint. After a bit, I looked up, and Libby was lying flat out on my cement patio with her face to the sun. She said that she'd gotten to the point where if she felt like she needed to lay down, she did, wherever she was. I knew then that we were done painting, and I needed to take her home to Jack. I like thinking of her on another adventure, waiting for all of us to come over. She'll have a project, and I'll bring the paint.
I'm Harriet Whaley, and this is my son Jackson Eddy. Adlai Stevenson once said that it's not the years in a life that counts, but it's the life in the years. And I'm sure I wouldn't be the first to say that Libby packed a lot of living in her years. She probably packed 3 times more living in her life than anybody I've ever met. Libby became my sister when she married my brother. And I never had a sister before Libby became mine. From the time that we first met in North Carolina, it was clear that Libby was no ordinary woman. She was my teacher from the beginning. She was this adventurous mountain woman. She actually lived in Asheville, North Carolina, in a log cabin. And she taught me how to climb the walls. I can still see Libby to this day climbing up those walls like a spider, and she'd traverse the top of the doorway, and then she'd like that. Diane already talked about the beautiful jewelry that Libby made, and she was an enthusiastic teacher for me as well when we went to the bead show at Earl Warren. She'd tirelessly flit from booth to booth, and she'd be trying to score the best deal she could on some rare garnet or jasper or some rare stone. She was quite the negotiator. Today I'm wearing a necklace that Libby made for me, and I love it so much I've never bought another necklace that has red in it, because when the holidays roll around, I always want to be wearing the necklace that Libby made. Once my son grabbed it, and the beads flew everywhere. And Libby remade it for me, but it wasn't exactly the same. And so she dug patiently through lots of photos of Christmases past until she finally found a photo of me wearing it. And darn if she didn't remake it again exactly the way it was the first time. And she teased me about my need for it to be perfect for years afterwards. You see, Libby knew that things didn't have to be perfect to be perfectly fun. And that's what made her so great at therapeutic recreation and a natural adventurer. And it made sense somehow that such an extraordinary woman would come in such a small and beautiful package. I mean, how else could she travel for a month in Thailand in a knapsack if her clothes weren't so irritatingly small? Libby had a knack for finding the humor in any situation. I think someone used the word wicked before, and that's true. She was a wicked punster, and she loved a good joke or any YouTube video of a dog doing anything. She sent me videos of dogs playing pianos, of dogs singing, of dogs saying, "I love you." And most recently, she sent me a video entitled Why Email Was Invented. And it had clips of dogs that were charging mail slots and then attacking the mail as it fell through to the floor. Libby sure did love dogs. When she moved to Santa Barbara, she came with a dog named Ginger. And then for years now, we've always had dogs who were related to each other, like Liz said. Her lab, Tootie, was my lab's grandmother. And for 4 years now, we've had Golden Doodle sisters, but she got the good one. Last month, we adopted a puppy, and we were trying to come up with a name, and I told Libby that Jackson had suggested naming the puppy Libby after her, and Libby said, "You should name your puppy Libby. I was always kind of frisky." Libby was feisty, too. For a time there, we were next-door neighbors on Shoreline Drive, and Libby and Jack would take turns every week, taking turns doing the cooking and the dishes. She told me about a time, I guess it must have been her week to do the dishes, but she must not have been in a good mood, because when he told her that the dirty dishes were stacking up and it was her week to wash them, Libby told me that she just started throwing them out the kitchen door onto the driveway. I don't know how many dishes she said she broke that day in the driveway, but I'm guessing that no one ever reminded her again that it was her week to do the dishes. I'd like to quote Albert Einstein: "Our death is not an end if we can live on in our children and the younger generation." And Libby didn't have any children, but she did experience childbirth. And there are 2 young people in the audience today, Harper and Jackson, and you were both first welcomed into the world in the delivery room by Libby. She had 5 nieces and 1 nephew, and she made it a priority to be close to all of them. I'm comforted by the fact that the gifts that Libby shared of herself will live on in our future generations. And I want to say to all the young people that Libby touched, her nieces and her nephew and her friends' children, that she always gave you the very best of herself. Being with Libby was a magical experience for any child, whether she took you hiking to a waterfall or climbing a rock wall or just geocaching around town. And my 12-year-old son, Jackson, is Libby's only nephew, and he'd like to share with you a few words from a letter that he wrote her last month.
Dear Aunt Libby, I wanted to tell you some of the ways you have made an impact on my life. Hope. Throughout hard times in my life, your courage has given me hope that I, just like you, can make it and have happier times ahead of me. Appreciation for nature. You taught me to listen to the wind, see the beauty in nature, and to look for the little things like butterflies. Courage. You have shown me that whatever obstacles life puts in front of you, you can overcome them. I have taken your courage with me wherever I go, from backpacking in the woods to long-distance sailing. Kindness. I've always appreciated your thoughtfulness to others. You always seem to put others first, even when you may need the help. I think of you every day and try and be at least half the person you are. My hero. You always have been there for me, even if you weren't there. When I was in junior guards and about to jump off the Pallitto Pier, one of the scariest things I've ever done, I felt you there, telling me that this opportunity does not come easily and that you should just do it. I wound up jumping, and it was one of the scariest, most fun things I've ever done. Inspiration. On Saturday morning when I'm being a couch potato, I think of you and what you would do with the wonderful weather outside. I go outside and become active. You've helped me with my fitness even when you're not with me, because you help me to see the exercise as a fun opportunity instead of a chore. Remembering you. You will never be forgotten by me or anybody else who has met you. You have made such an impact on everybody's life, especially mine. I look up to you and will always take your lessons with me. You have taught me about kindness, friendship, love, and so much more. I wish that you could be there to mentor me through my whole life and all of its struggles, because I know that you got through them and achieved a happiness that only most people could dream of. You have always focused on the positive things in life and never the negative. You are my inspiration, my hero. You have taught me the importance of courage, kindness, and hope. Thank you, Aunt Libby. I'll love you forever.
I remember a conversation that Libby and I had in the week before she passed, and she was expressing that she didn't understand what lesson she was supposed to be learning from what was happening to her. It would have been like Libby to ponder her experiences in terms of life lessons, but I knew a different truth, and it's one that I learned over 25 years ago in a log cabin in Asheville, North Carolina. And that is that Libby wasn't here just to learn. She was here to teach. Today I invite you to join me in allowing ourselves to be changed by the things that Libby taught us about living life to the fullest. This would be her real eulogy, our willingness to laugh at ourselves more, to spend time with our hands in the dirt, to be courageous, to catch a big fish, to open our hearts to new people and places, to help a friend in need, or to strive not to sweat the small stuff. If we can even make one change in ourselves to be more like Libby, we can all be more thoughtful partners, more caring friends, more loving parents, just better human beings, simply because of her. I'd like to close by reading a poem that Libby wrote and sent to friends and family in 2009 after turning to a local poetry support group. Like everything Libby attempted, she jumped into poetry with great gusto, and the results were deep and heartfelt and lyrical. Her poetry inspired me, so I asked people to write and submit photos and poems for Libby, and this is the collection that we gave her. And it begins with the poem that she wrote that January, 3.5 years ago. And it's entitled, To My Dear Ones. You know who you are. You're the ones who hold me close in your hearts, whose tender hugs transcend my fears into the love light that builds my strength. You're the ones who help me find peace in a war against a disease that hides sheepishly in my bones. You're the ones with whom I dance and share music and laughter that fills my soul with joy. Your acts of love and kindness lift my spirit to climb great heights, mountains steep and fierce, yet tackled with the unyielding support of camaraderie infused with hope and passion. When in the night I cannot sleep, I invite you in. Thoughts of you and cherished memories bring me comfort and fill the darkest recesses of my mind. And as the mystery of this life unfolds, I journey forth with a lightness in my step and a smile upon my face, as I am certain I will never walk alone. And so it is with gratitude and a humble heart, I say thank you, my dear ones, for being by my side. Libby was a gift and an inspiration to my family, and I will always hold her memory by my side.
True love, it's one of the most precious things in the world and one of the hardest things to find. You have to wait and search, be strong, hold on, it'll come. So they say. Jack and Libby were fortunate. They found each other and they found true love. Now, finding your best friend, that's not easy to come by as well. Many friends come into our lives and quickly go, but some stay for a while and leave such a big print on your soul. We were fortunate. Libby left a big print on our hearts. She was a true friend. Libby and I were best friends. And coincidentally, I just finished reading a book about two friends. It was a biographical account of a special friendship between two men. And one of the characters compared making friends to going fishing. He said that when some people go fishing, they do something called catch and release. They go to a lot of trouble to catch a fish, only to throw it back in the ocean. But others are proud of the fish they catch. They want to bring them home and show them off and eventually eat their catch because it sustains them. Libby went fishing and caught a lot of fish, and so many are here today. Thankfully, she didn't release us, but she brought us home and showed us off. And it was her dear friendship that sustained us. We all enjoyed so many moments with her. For me, it was running, hiking, biking, and motorcycling. We spent most weekends together doing these things. She was the teacher and the leader of this friendship, and I was her reluctant but eager follower. She showed me the beautiful begonias and bromeliads at Lotus Land, the adventurous hikes and long runs in Los Barriles. And she showed me off to so many of her dear friends and family, and I am so grateful. She led me to a marathon in San Diego, and I remember following her while we rode those tight twisties on Highway 33. And how many of you here did she lead up to that peak, Cathedral Peak? She inspired me to take swim lessons with the Rene at rehab, volunteer at wheelchair camp, and dance out loud. Even if you're over 40, it's okay. So many of these things I continue to enjoy, and some are even my deepest passions. But now when I run with Vogue. When I swim with Emily. When I bike, it's with Jeff. And when I have breakfast on Sundays, it'll always be with Jack. These are the things Libby showed me, and the friends she showed me off to. And now they will continue to sustain me. Libby, my dear friend, thanks for catching us and not releasing us. Thank you.
I'm Debbie, my daughter Shelley, my husband George, and I'm Libby's sister. And hello to all of you. I know a lot of you may have been at her birthday party. And I remember that birthday party because people were going, oh, I didn't know you. I didn't know you, Libby. I didn't know you knew Libby. So it was a lot of crowd coming together that knew Libby. I was amazed at that. We have many stories about travel, but I'm telling you, that book, Bossy Pants, she was bossy. And I'm not like, I like to hike and do some things, but there's a mountain down in Baja called Flat Top Mountain. So Libby said, we must hike that mountain. I said, okay, we'll do it. And it's a gradual climb and everything. So we get halfway up the mountain, and I was looking up. I was going, are we going all the way to the top? And then she says, well, Debbie, don't look at the top. Look around where we are now. Look at all the beautiful things that we can see from here. And that's just the way she was. I mean, no matter what you were doing, she would still make you go to the top of that mountain. In fact, one night we were sitting by the bar at Baja, and Libby said it was full moon, and Libby and Jack and I were down there, and she said, you know, I've always wanted to climb Flat Top Mountain at night on a full moon. And I just kind of looked at Jack like this, oh my God. And some guy at the bar said, yeah, well, there's rattlesnakes come out at night. So we didn't ever have to do that. In fact, she said, she got really pissed and said, well, Shelley's coming tomorrow. She'll do it with me. So, and then there was a time she encouraged me to try snorkeling, and I didn't like that either. But I did it, and we were out there in the water, and as soon as it got deep, I just was freaking out. And she said, well, take my hand. And so she was pulling me to where I could touch the bottom. And I can't even explain to you what it was like to have her hand with her pulling me through that water. And she was just trying to show me the fish as we were going. And I could only think about, the support she was giving me to get to where I could touch the bottom. It was great. And a lot of times down there it was magical. It was just like being at a beach and nobody was around. I would always say to her, and I'd write to her, how was I blessed with such a sister as you? And Lib played, laughed, and loved with a passion and a steadfast pace. And the day she left us, it thundered in the morning, and in the afternoon a rainbow came by to lift her spirit away. I imagined her little pixie self sitting on that rainbow, saying, woohoo, what an adventure. She made best of the time she spent on earth for herself and others, and I'll miss her forever. But my big thanks go to Jack Whaley for supporting her, loving her, and being the rock for her during her time on earth. You're an awesome man, Jack Whaley. I'm going to try to read this. Death is nothing at all. I have only slipped away into the next room. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Laugh as we always laughed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without effort. Life means all it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. Sorry, I had to throw that in. There is absolutely unbroken continuity. Why should I be out of your mind because I am out of your sight? I am but waiting for you, for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well. Nothing is past. Nothing is lost. One brief moment, and it all will be as was before, only better, infinitely happier, and forever. I'll miss you always. Thanks for everybody being her friend.
You know, we've heard what a great husband Jack Whaley was to Libby, and it's certainly true. It's phenomenal. They're a model for her marriage. But Libby also had an outstanding sister. You know, last week we had a family beach weekend, and some of Libby's family and friends were at a beach cottage, and we began to talk about honoring Libby in some way. And there's a family cemetery in a little town called Youngsville, North Carolina. And we're going to put a marker there for Libby. And there was some discussion about, you know, what we write on the marker. And eventually we came up with, you want to take a little hike?
For 4 hours. Oh, one more thing. Rick Stich, I know he was so proud. Libby always tried to get you to do stuff. We went to Florida last spring, and she wanted to do the thing where you sit on the back, you sit on a boat, and they pull you up in this, what is it, hang gliding or something. I didn't want to do it. And so we saw the other people go up. A couple went up, and they went very high. They go 500 feet, pulling you behind this boat. And the guy said, "Let's dip them." And I was going, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to be dipped." So, but I'll tell you, and they were waving and rocking, but when we went up in that seat, I was so white-knuckled. I mean, I could not let go, and I couldn't move my whole body. And I glanced over at Libby. She was as white-knuckled as I was. And she never moved.
I'm her niece, Shelley. I didn't really prepare anything, but she's the biggest inspiration of life and how you should be and treat people and love people. And she is that fairy dust and has sprinkled it amongst all of us, and it will stay there forever. So I love her so much, always.
I will do my best to get through this without crying, but I'm fairly certain I'll cry. So, and I'm okay with that if you are. From my limited experience hanging around Libby, she was always up for being with good friends and always up for celebrating life. She was a lover of a good party, and today is that kind of a day. So look around you. See if you see Libby. I saw her doing a funky calypso dance routine in a bathing suit somewhere near that hedge. See it? Keep an eye out for her. Close your eyes and see if you feel her presence. Look deeply into the eyes. Look deeply into the eyes of the people here today. You'll see Libby. She's here. Rene and the wonderful crew behind this celebration of Libby's life asked if I'd speak on behalf of the former patients whose lives Libby touched. But here's the deal. That's an enormous responsibility, but it's also a wonderful honor. I know there's a bunch of us out there today. I'll do my best. The sad reality, however, is that I don't know how many lives she touched. I'm guessing it's thousands. Toss in that ripple effect, and it's tens of thousands and probably more. Each patient whose life Libby touched has a unique story, probably more interesting than mine, but here goes. November 28th, 2004, I had a stroke. I was 49 years old, in pretty good health, or so I thought. I'd been surfing the day before. I found myself as a patient at the Rehab Institute at Santa Barbara, which is now Cottage Rehabilitation Hospital. The right side of my body was 80 pounds of dead weight. I couldn't lift a finger. I couldn't move a toe. A few days into therapy, in walks this pixie-like lady. She's bubbly. She's smiling. She's got this twangy, goofy southern drawl. Goofy. To me, that was really goofy. So she saddles up next to my wheelchair, and we start sharing some information. And she's assessing me, I keep telling myself, because they do a lot of assessing there at the rehab. And then out of the blue, she blurts out, "Let's hit the pool." And to me, that was crazy. That was like saying, "Hey, let's go skydive or let's go sumo wrestle." It made no sense to me at all, the concept of jumping in a pool. I couldn't stand up. Didn't she realize that I was in a wheelchair? This lady's crazy. But Libby knew what was possible. And more importantly, she taught me to push myself beyond what I thought was possible. And isn't that an incredible gift? And every patient that was lucky enough to have spent time with Libby got to experience that. How blessed are we? So with the help of Donna Glen and Rene Van Hoorn and the amazing therapists at the rehabilitation hospital, I learned to walk again. I learned to write again, think clearly again, read again. I relearned what 2 + 2 is. I'm a CPA, that's important. What's so funny about that? A year later, my wife and I ran the San Diego Marathon, just as Libby had done. And although it ain't pretty, I can surf again. But here's the kicker. Libby taught me an even greater life lesson after my recovery. She gently coaxed me into discovering the wonders of volunteering. She asked if I'd be interested in helping other stroke survivors. Soon thereafter, she had me volunteering at Project Reentry. I was serving morning breakfast to patients. I was playing the piano at the dining hall. I was doing one-on-one peer counseling with stroke survivors and their families. Last June, my wife and I were guests of the National Stroke Association in Washington, D.C., where we got to speak with our congressional representatives on behalf of stroke awareness, stroke prevention, and stroke recovery. So thank you, Libby. Thank you for all these beautiful gifts you've given me and all the other patients at rehab. I'm at least 110% better than I was before my stroke. What? On behalf of all your other patients, thank you for seeing the world through our eyes. Thank you for giving us the strength beyond what we thought was possible. You were a gentle master at your craft. Your life was an incredible adventure. Your life was a gift to us. How lucky are we to have had time with you. So dance, Libby, dance. Dance, Libby, dance. Thank you for hitting the pool with me that December morning. Thank you.
All right, I'm guessing everybody's getting a little bit chilly. You only got 2 of us left, and Jack's the last one. He will definitely have our attention. Again, my name's Rene, and I had the pleasure of working with one of my best friends for 23 years. So there are a lot of people, and I'm just going to call it rehab, because it's been called a lot of things over the years. The good things, I hope. But wave your hand if you worked, and this includes staff, patients, volunteers at rehab. Just take a look around how many people are here. Thank you guys all for coming out. Yeah, now Jack, those are all rehab people, okay? For someone as active, creative, and selfless as Libby, there was really only one option when it came to choosing a career for herself, and that was recreation therapy. Libby found the career that could encompass her passion for gardening, art, cycling, sports, golf, socializing, swimming, playing, and yes, fishing. Libby attacked her profession with vigor and grace. On a typical day at rehab, Libby could be found in the pool, in the garden, playing a game of cards, creating jewelry, and or taking a stroll at Shoreline Park. Sounds like a pretty good gig, surely not something someone would call work. That is, of course, unless the patient in the pool was 1.5 feet taller and outweighed Libby by 100 pounds, and the person in the garden was only able to stand with what we like to refer to as mod assist to pot a plant. And the person creating the jewelry only had use of one hand, the non-dominant one. And the person at Shoreline Park was out in the community for their very first time as a new wheelchair user, dealing with all the raw emotional and physical barriers that can create. Some would say these were challenges, but not for Libby. For Libby, they were opportunities. The opportunity to help someone find themselves, reconnect with the world, and once again feel accomplished, appreciated, and valued. Now, was Libby always a natural at this TR thing in physical rehab? She would say no. When she was hired back in 1986 by Kay to work at what was then called Memorial Rehabilitation Hospital, this was Libby's first clinical job, and she wasn't so sure she could handle the hospital setting, being that she had spent most of her recreation therapy career in the woods or in the community. Another story. As she shared at her retirement party at rehab, she was so overwhelmed in her first weeks that she almost passed out daily by the simple sights, sounds, and let's not forget smells of rehab. But Libby, being who she was, took it all in and decided to learn by doing. And boy, did Libby have lots of learning opportunities in those early days. There was one time when she took a group of patients, she shared this at her retirement party, out on a community treatment, and this was at the time when we had a big old white bus and a driver and a volunteer. She had 5 patients, 2 of them young guys with newly acquired spinal cord injuries. Well, after she let everyone out of the bus on State Street, a little bit treacherous, she turned around to find the 2 guys missing. Walked up and down State Street, found them at the next bar. So their treatment plan obviously involved returning to drinking beer. It wasn't on Libby's treatment plan. As the years passed, Libby learned a lot of life lessons at rehab, and another one of them being that if any man was over 6'3" and would be completely dependent and they came into rehab, he was going to be Libby's patient. We found it both comical and amazing how this kept happening and how Libby just rolled with the punches, sometimes literally, and was able to get remarkable results with those treasured patients. She worked with our first coma recovery patient, Sean, who woke from his coma while at rehab, and before we knew it, he was walking in Cathedral Oaks Pool with Libby. And yes, he was over 6 foot tall. And then there was Tom, who lived with ALS for many, many years, surprising everyone. But I think Libby was never surprised. She always believed it's not what you got going on, it's how you live with it. Libby first started working with Tom during her first bout of chemo back in '94, when Tom could drive and walk to his aquatic therapy appointments. And she worked with him years later when the only place he could move freely was in the pool. And as Libby said, swimming gave him wings. I'm pretty sure they're both enjoying a swim together right now. As much as Libby was always up for a good hand cycle or round of golf, her passion for art and creativity was never far from her mind. As you heard today, Libby's spirit really did live in her art and expression. So it's no surprise that when Eddy entered rehab with an incomplete spinal cord injury and a passion for drumming, that big things were going to happen. Before we knew it, the day room was turned into Santa Barbara Bowl 2. A jam session happened every Thursday afternoon with a group of Eddy's friends called the Rehab Rhythm Rockers, and I believe someone is sporting that t-shirt out in the audience. There he is, right now. Now, this was only the beginning. Eddy and Libby's endless inspiration and motivation created what is now the Rhythm Arts Project, and it continues today with Eddy at its helm. Libby's passion for people, recreation, and life reached beyond the walls of rehab, and with the help of her many more programs came into existence, including Jody House, Rehab in the Park, Hot on Life, Adapted Kayaking, and the continuation of the junior wheelchair sports camp. Even with Libby's retirement, her dedication to our TR department never ended. She came back and volunteered at camp in our rhythm therapy program and with her trusted companion, Bogue, in our pet visitation program. We still sense Libby in the halls of rehab. We see her working in the garden. We feel her making waves in the pool. And we hear her drumming in the day room. Libby was such a special part of rehab that she will always have that special place, both there in our walls and in our hearts. Thank you.
Well, I need my dog because I found that when I'm starting to break down a little bit, if I kick the dog, it helps me a whole lot. Come here, come here. Libby moved to California after I'd already been living here for 3 or 4 years. And about a year after Libby was here, she told me one time, she said that all of our friends were my friends and that she hadn't really made any friends of her own yet. But it is not like that anymore. I mean, really, I think all of our friends are really Libby's friends, except for a couple of like drunks over there, and they. But David spoke about a couple of things that were important to Libby, and Rene did. But I wanted to focus on what I think is most important about Libby and what was most important to Libby. But unfortunately, as someone suggested about Southern speak, I'm not the most eloquent speaker. Who was that, David? But what I can do is maybe illustrate it. So I'll start off talking about something that happened in the days right after Libby passed away. It was sort of chaotic. And a lot of people were helping, and people were coming. There's a lot of stuff going on. We were trying to sort of collect some things and figure out what was important and what wasn't. And one of the things we were focusing on was one of the many things was Libby's jewelry. And after a couple of days, there was a piece of jewelry we could not find that was very important to Libby. She wore it all the time. And it was mainly Debbie and Maria. Where's Maria? And myself. And the mantra became, "Where's the bean? Where's the bean?" And we for like 2 or 3, right? We kept looking for the bean. We couldn't find the bean. And finally I found the bean in a little covered dish that where she kept some of the stuff that she wore all the time. And now the bean, it was a little Tiffany silver bean. And the bean was nice, but it wasn't spectacular. But the guy who gave it to her was spectacular. And and as you can pick up today, Libby had many, many other men in her life. Thank God. I mean, it takes the pressure off, you know. But the guy who gave her the bean, she found a kindred spirit in this person. he reflected, mirrored her strongest ambitions and motivations. And for Libby, the thing that was important about Libby was that, I mean, you see all the stuff that was important to Libby, but the thing that was most important is that she loved helping people. She loved making a difference in people's lives by helping people. And the way she helped people was to help people, many times injured people, find joy in their life through help me somebody, TR, right, yeah, thank you. Where's, we're going to get, I'm the last, so this is almost over, okay? So the guy who gave her this, we found the bean, the guy who gave her this bean was Herb Tews. You guys know Herb Tews? Herb Tews, where's Herb? Herb, come on down here, Herb, if you don't mind. There's a method to this madness. Herb started volunteering at rehab, and Herb and Libby became, they bonded and became good friends, and then they grew to love each other, right? Very definitely. Not in that way. No. I don't think. No.
Please, no. I have to tell you a story about buying this little bean, because I told my wife I had to go out to get a gift for someone very special, and she obviously knew who it was. And so I came back after 3 hours of shopping, and I learned that there are actually 8 or 9 jewelry stores in town. And I came back without anything. And she said, well, that's not such a big deal. It's a retirement party. You buy it for her and, you know, find something, you know, get a heart or something that shows your warmth towards her. And I said, no, that's not good enough. So I went back the next day and I shopped and I went to another town. And I still couldn't find anything. Finally, on the 3rd day, my wife was getting a little irritated, and deservedly so. But I found this bean. And the reason this bean had meaning for me, because it is the basic essence of life. It is life itself. And that's what she meant to me. And her ability to nourish other people. And a bean is for nourishment. And she spread that nourishment to the patients, as you mentioned, but she spread it to everybody. And a person's success in life is really, at the end, not the material things or the accomplishments or what you've done, but it's what you've enabled other people to do and instill in them a particular passion. And that passion was imparted to me by her ability to be so warm and such a good coach that rehab has become a second home to me. And it means so much to me to work with people with challenges. And she illustrated that. She deepened my faith in God or whatever faith you belong to. Because really the most important commandment is love thy neighbor as thyself. And she personified that to me. She and Rene are 2 people that I consider some of my finest mentors in life. And one gets a little older like I do, you look back on life and you try to find, you know, how you got to where you were. And it's the mentors in your life that really make a tremendous impact. And she has made that impact not just on me, but just look around. How many people are here? I've never been to a memorial service with more meaning and more passion. And every one of you could share interesting stories, unique stories with a good sense of humor, whether it's mountain climbing or falling off a surfboard. But she has enriched my life just as it has enriched yours. So I think we have something.
Can I talk now?
You can talk now.
I didn't know he was
keep me
going to.
away
I mean, I want to go have a glass of wine.
I'll join you.
We're going to get there, and there's a method to this. So I talked to Herb about this, and so we have the bean, and then Herb and I decided that we needed to make sure that that bean went on to the right person. So we decided that bean's going to have to go to Rene Van Hoorn, don't you think? So Herb,
You heard very much.
Herb, you want to try to put it on her?
I will try.
Yeah, there you go.
If my hands aren't shaking too much.
I'm going to keep on going because I don't want to wait for these guys anymore. Okay, now the bean is nice, you know. It's a little Tiffany bean, and I love the fact that Renee's getting it, and that's Libby's, the one that Libby wore, and she wore it all the time. But then I started thinking about it, and remember, the point of my whole deal here is that I'm trying to illustrate to you in a way that's maybe not as eloquent as other, but illustrate what was most important to Libby and what was most important about Libby. And to me, it boiled down to this fundamental passion of helping people. And there were other people who helped Libby, enabled her to develop her skills, develop her techniques, and enabled her to reach her goals and realize her ambitions about this. And it was really the core of the TR group during Libby's whole career. And there are two people who were that group. And one of them is Sherrie Brooks, who is here. Where's Sherrie? Come on down. And the other one is Donna Glen. Donna, come on down. Cause I can go to a Tiffany store too. These are exactly the same beans, but Rene got the used one. Okay. Now we're getting to the good part, my favorite part, which is. Do we have to dance now? No. Now, well, since she said that, I will say one thing about Sherrie. She is not afraid of public nakedness. And you got to love that in a pretty woman. And Donna, although I don't know about her opinion of public nakedness, I did see a picture of her from the 60s wearing go-go boots. And all I got to say is, boots, Donna, 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 boots. Got the beans on? Everybody have the beans on? Yeah, we got the beans on. Okay. So we're almost finished. Everybody got to get your beans on? We're getting them. I apologize for this. Okay, so Donna, you stand right there. Sherrie, you stand right there. Jack's a little bossy too. Right here. Herb, you're right here. Okay. Hold on, I got to kick the dog. So here's the deal. These four people exemplify and embody everything that was most important to Libby and most important about Libby. An unyielding passion and compassion to help make other people's lives better, the energy and focus to act on those passions. So, many of you have those same passions. I think these people really exemplify and again embody that
For me, Libby lives on through these four, through many of you. So please stand up. Get them. Yeah!
Other than the naked dancing comment, that was beautiful. Remember, it wasn't me. All right. Thank you all. Are you, I thought you said it was
No. One sentence. As so many of you, all of you know, I'm sure, I am the luckiest son of a bitch to walk the face of this earth. Thank you.
Well, I got to admit he is. All right. There is some red wine that's getting too cold, some white wine that better not get any warmer, some beer, some refreshments, some water for my children, and some food. Thanks to Dave and the Big Easy Catering Company. Please hang around, share some stories, find some sun, and thank you all for being here. And dance.